My father, he made me. The rancher looked. Then did the unthinkable. The sun rose slowly over the wide-open fields, spilling golden light across the ranch. The air smelled of dry grass and soil, mixed with the faint scent of cattle and horses. The ranch had been in the family for generations, a place where every corner, every fence post, and every barn told a story. The land was beautiful, but it was also harsh. Life here demanded hard work, and from the moment a child could walk, they were expected to learn it. The father, a tall, sturdy man with rough hands and a weathered face, walked across the yard, his boots making soft thuds against the dirt. His eyes, sharp and unyielding, scanned the fields as if reading every blade of grass and every movement of the animals. He was a man who believed in discipline, in teaching lessons the hard way, and in shaping his child to survive in a world that was often unforgiving. His presence commanded respect, though it was a respect that often mixed with fear. The child, a boy of about 12, followed behind him, carrying a small bucket of feed. He had learned early that on this ranch, nothing came without effort. Every day was filled with chores, feeding the animals, repairing fences, carrying water, and helping with tasks that tested strength and patience. The boy wanted to do well. He wanted his father to look at him and see not just a child, but someone capable, someone strong. Yet no matter how hard he tried, the father's approval was always just out of reach. "Careful with that," the father said, his voice low but firm. "Don't spill it."
"Every drop counts." "Yes, Dad," the boy replied, trying not to tremble.
He balanced the bucket carefully, aware that one mistake could bring a sharp word or a disappointed glance. The father watched, silent, as the boy walked across the yard. It felt like a test, a constant measure of his worth in his father's eyes. The ranch was vast, stretching as far as the eye could see. Rolling hills gave way to flat plains, dotted with wooden fences and patches of wildflowers that managed to survive despite the wind and sun. Horses grazed lazily near the barn, and cows moved slowly, lowing softly. Life on the ranch was peaceful in moments like these, but peace here was fragile. One wrong move, one moment of carelessness, could turn a simple day into a struggle. The father knew this, and he wanted his child to know it too. After the morning chores, the father led the boy to the horses. "Today you'll ride Daisy," he said, pointing to a small chestnut mare. "She's gentle, but she listens only to someone who respects her. Do it right, and she'll follow you. Do it wrong, and she'll remind you that you're not in charge." The boy's heart raced. He had ridden before, but he had never been asked to handle Daisy alone. The father didn't offer help or guidance, only observation. The boy approached the horse slowly, extending his hand to let Daisy sniff him. Her large eyes watched him, calm but alert. He mounted carefully, feeling the saddle shift beneath him. Every movement mattered. "Psst! Keep your back straight. Don't hold her too tight," the father instructed, standing a few steps away. His voice was calm, but the weight behind it made the boy's hands tremble slightly. The boy guided Daisy out into the open field. At first, she moved slowly, testing him as much as he was testing himself. He remembered everything he had been taught: how to position his legs, how to hold the reins, how to move with her. The wind brushed against his face, and for a moment there was a sense of freedom. But the father's eyes never left him. The boy could feel the judgment in that gaze, measuring him, weighing him, deciding if he was ready to handle more of life's challenges. Hours passed with small lessons, guiding Daisy through obstacles, leading her over uneven ground, and learning to anticipate her movements. The boy was exhausted, but he didn't stop. He wanted his father to see that he could do this, that he could handle responsibility. Yet with every mistake, the father's expression tightened, a silent reminder that life on this ranch was not easy. When the sun hung high in the sky, casting sharp shadows on the ground, they took a break under a large oak tree. The father handed the boy a water bottle. "Drink slowly," he said. "You need to keep your strength. One day you'll be responsible for more than yourself. You'll see what it means to take care of everything here. Animals, land, and people." Psst. The boy nodded, swallowing the water, trying to keep his nerves in check. He wanted to understand what his father meant, but some lessons couldn't be explained with words. They had to be felt, experienced. The father had learned them in the same way, and now he was passing them on. Hard as it seemed. As the day went on, the boy began to see the rhythm of life on the ranch more clearly. There was a certain order to it, a flow that connected every living thing. The wind carried the smell of hay and earth. The cattle moved like a steady heartbeat across the land, and even Daisy seemed to sense the boy's determination. The boy began to feel a quiet pride. He was learning, slowly, to meet the expectations set before him. But even in these small victories, there was fear. Fear of disappointing his father, fear of failing, and fear of not being enough. The father noticed these moments too. Sometimes his silence was harsher than words, and the boy could feel the weight of it. Yet he also sensed something else beneath that stern exterior, a desire for the boy to grow strong, not just in body, but in mind and heart. By evening, the chores were done. The sun dipped low, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. The boy sat on the fence, watching the animals settle down for the night. Best. The father stood nearby, leaning on a post, his face softened by the fading light. There was no praise, no words of approval. Yet in that quiet moment, the boy felt a connection to him, a shared understanding that life on the ranch was more than work. It was about resilience, respect, and the hard-won lessons that shaped a person. As darkness fell, the boy went inside the small farmhouse. He could still hear the distant lowing of cows and the rustle of leaves in the wind. He felt tired, sore, and a little afraid, but also proud. He had survived another day, learned another lesson, and perhaps, in a small way, earned a fraction of the respect he sought. The father followed, and as they sat at the dinner table, there was no conversation about the day's trials, no lecture, no encouragement, just the quiet presence of two people bound by blood, land, and the unspoken understanding of what it took to live and endure in this place. That night, as the boy lay in bed, he thought about the day and what it meant.
He understood, even if only a little, that life here would never be easy, but it could teach him something no classroom or city street ever could.
He fell asleep with the sounds of the ranch surrounding him, ready to face whatever the next day would bring. The next morning, the ranch woke slowly to the sound of crowing roosters and the faint whistle of wind through the open plains. The boy stirred in his bed, muscles sore from yesterday's long hours of work, but his mind was already alert. He had learned that on a ranch, mornings came early, and there was no time to waste. Today, his father had said he would teach him something more difficult, something that would test not just his strength, but his judgment. By the time he stepped outside, the sun was already climbing, painting the land in soft golden hues. The father was already in the yard, inspecting the fences and checking the livestock. Despair. His expression was calm but serious, the kind of look that made the boy's stomach tighten with anticipation. There was no need for words. The father's presence alone carried a lesson.
"Today, you're going to help me with the north pasture," the father said, his voice steady. "We need to move the cattle closer to the barn."
Watch, learn, and do exactly as I say. The boy nodded, swallowing the lump in his throat. Moving the cattle was no small task. They were large animals, stubborn and easily spooked. The boy knew that one wrong move could mean a chase across uneven ground or worse. But he also knew that his father was counting on him. As they walked toward the herd, the boy noticed how carefully his father observed the animals. Every step the cattle took, every flick of their ears, every soft grunt was noted. The father moved with quiet authority, a rhythm that seemed almost invisible to the untrained eye. The boy followed closely, trying to match his pace, his gaze darting from the cattle to his father and back again. The first challenge came sooner than he expected. A young calf had wandered close to the fence, its small legs tangled in the wires. The father approached calmly, speaking softly to the animal, easing it out without alarming it. The boy watched, fascinated. He had never seen such skill and patience. "Your turn," the father said, stepping back. "Be gentle, but don't hesitate. They feel your fear."
Move with confidence. The boy took a deep breath and approached the calf.
His hands trembled slightly as he untangled the wire. The calf struggled, kicking its legs, but the boy held firm, repeating the soft words his father had used. Breath. Slowly, carefully, the calf was freed. Relief washed over him. He looked up at his father, hoping for a smile. But the father only nodded once, his eyes returning to the herd. It was approval without words, and somehow it meant more than praise. As they guided the herd toward the barn, the boy began to notice patterns in their behavior. Some moved in groups, following the lead of stronger cows, while others lagged behind, uncertain. The father's voice guided him through every decision, yet he allowed the boy to act, to learn through trial and careful observation. The boy felt the weight of responsibility, a mixture of fear and pride that made his heart beat faster. Hours passed, and the sun rose higher, its heat pressing down on the land. The boy's muscles ached, but he refused to slow down. Every day on the ranch demanded endurance, and he was learning what it meant to endure, not just survive. The father moved beside him, correcting mistakes, offering quiet instructions, and sometimes allowing silence to speak the lesson. Midday came with a break under the shade of a large oak. The father handed the boy a piece of bread and a canteen of water. They sat in silence, watching the herd settle in a nearby field. The boy's hands were scratched, his shirt stained with sweat and dirt, yet he felt a deep sense of accomplishment. Brrr! "Do you understand why I push you?" the father asked suddenly, his eyes meeting the boy's. The boy nodded. "I think so. You want me to be strong, to handle the work, to revive here." The father's expression didn't change, but his gaze softened just enough to hint at something deeper. Despair. It's not just about survival. It's about knowing your limits, about learning to make decisions when there's no one to guide you. One day, this land, these animals, maybe even your family, will depend on you. You have to be ready. The boy chewed thoughtfully. The words were heavy, but he understood their meaning, even if it frightened him.
Life on the ranch was not simply about work. It was about responsibility, courage, and facing challenges that could not be avoided. After the break, they returned to the herd.
The next task was even more difficult. A section of the fence had been damaged in a recent storm, and several cattle were dangerously close to wandering off. The father handed the boy a hammer and some nails. "Fix the fence as you move the cattle. Do it carefully. One wrong move, and it could cost us more than time." The boy's hands worked quickly, but the nails were stubborn, and the wood splintered under his grip. The cattle shifted, impatient, sensing his hesitation. He remembered his father's lessons. Stay calm, think ahead, move with confidence. Slowly, Carefully, he secured the fence, one nail at a time. The cattle began to move along the path, guided by the boy's steady hand. The father observed quietly, stepping in only when necessary. There was no scolding, no harsh words, just the presence of a man who expected excellence and patience. The boy felt the tension of the moment, the pressure of responsibility, and the thrill of rising to meet it. Each small success built his confidence, though he knew the day was far from over. As the afternoon sun began to dip, a sudden sound broke the rhythm of the ranch. A wild coyote appeared at the edge of the field, eyeing the young calves. The herd became restless and panic rippled through the animals. The boy froze, unsure of what to do. The father's voice cut through the chaos, calm but firm. "Buy them toward the barn! Don't run! Lead!" The boy's heart pounded, but he moved quickly, positioning himself between the coyote and the herd. He shouted, waved his arms, and clapped his hands. The cattle followed him, instinctively sensing his authority in that moment of danger. The coyote hesitated, then vanished into the distant hills. The boy's chest heaved as relief washed over him. The father stood nearby, watching silently.
There were no words of praise, no smile, only a nod of acknowledgement.
The boy realized something important. On this ranch, approval was earned through action, not words. Fear could not control him. Only courage, quick thinking, and calm decisions could. Evening arrived with a sense of quiet triumph. The cattle were safe, the fences repaired, and the boy's body ached in the familiar way that meant a day had been lived fully. They walked back to the farmhouse, side by side. The father's presence was steady, reassuring, yet still demanding. The boy had survived the day, learned lessons that could not be taught in a classroom, and felt a sense of accomplishment that was uniquely his own.
Over dinner, they spoke little.
The meal was simple, bread, stew, and milk, but satisfying. The boy reflected on the day, thinking about the challenges he had faced and how he had overcome them. The father observed him carefully, perhaps sensing the growth that came from experience rather than instruction. Later, as the boy lay in bed, he thought about the events of the day. He realized that his father's methods, though harsh at times, were meant to prepare him for life. The world outside the ranch could be cruel, unforgiving, and unpredictable. Here, on the open plains, he was learning to face that world, one lesson at a time. The night was quiet, broken only by the distant lowing of cows and the whisper of wind through the trees. The boy closed his eyes, exhausted but proud. He understood now that life on the ranch was more than chores and cattle. It was about responsibility, courage, and learning to trust oneself under pressure. He drifted to sleep, knowing that tomorrow would bring more challenges, but also more opportunities to grow and prove himself. And in the shadows of the room, the father watched, not with words, but with quiet attention. He knew the boy was changing, slowly becoming the person he needed to be, strong, capable, and ready for whatever the future held. The morning broke gray and heavy, clouds hanging low over the ranch, promising rain. The air smelled damp, a mix of wet soil and the faint scent of hay. The boy rose from bed with a strange sense of unease. Something in the quiet of the morning felt different, heavier. Perhaps it was the approaching storm, or perhaps it was the feeling that today would test him in a way nothing before had. The father was already outside, boots sinking slightly into the wet ground. He moved with purpose, checking the fences along the ridge where the rain had loosened the soil. His expression was sharper than usual, eyes scanning every inch of the land. The boy hesitated at the door, taking a deep breath. He could feel the weight of the day pressing down on him. "You'll come with me," the father said, not looking back. "We have to make sure the herd doesn't break through the north fence. That storm last night weakened it." Some of the younger calves could wander off, and the rivers rising fast. The boy swallowed hard and nodded, grabbing the tools he would need. They walked in silence toward the north pasture, the wind tugging at their clothes, bending the tall grass beneath its force. The father's pace was steady, unyielding, and the boy struggled to keep up. He felt a knot of anxiety twisting in his stomach. He had handled challenges before, but this felt different, as if the land itself was testing him. When they reached the fence, the damage was clear. A large section had been torn loose, some of the wooden posts broken and leaning dangerously. The river nearby had risen overnight, its waters swirling angrily, threatening to flood the lower fields. The boy's hands shook slightly as he assessed the situation. He knew that if the fence failed completely, the herd could scatter, and it would take hours, maybe days, to gather them all. The father handed him a hammer and some nails.
"Fix this as you move the herd," he said. "I'll handle the cattle."
"Don't panic, even if something goes wrong."
The boy nodded, though his chest felt tight.
He started hammering nails into the splintered posts, sweat mixing with the rain beginning to fall. The wind picked up, and the first drops of rain stung his cheeks. Bad. Every sound, the snapping of wood, the lowing of cows, the rush of water, seemed louder, sharper. The father's presence beside him was steady, but he offered no help, only guidance from his eyes and brief commands. The herd was restless. Some cows lingered too close to the damaged fence, lowing nervously, while the younger calves huddled together, unsure. The boy tried to calm them, speaking softly, waving his arms to guide them towards safer ground. It worked, but only partially. One calf, smaller than the rest, darted toward the riverbank, its tiny hooves slipping in the mud. "Don't let it near the river!" the father shouted. His voice carried a mixture of urgency and authority. The boy ran after the calf, heart pounding, mud sucking at his boots. He reached out, but the animal was faster, slipping closer to the edge where the water churned violently. Fear gripped him. One wrong move could send the calf into the river, and he would never forgive himself. The father moved quickly, but not as the boy expected. Instead of rushing to grab the calf, he positioned himself to block the other cows from scattering, keeping the herd under control. The boy's eyes met his father's, confused and scared. "Dad!" he shouted. The father's gaze was calm, almost unreadable. "Breath. You can do this. Focus. One step at a time." The boy's hands shook as he reached for the calf again. He carefully guided it back from the river's edge, speaking softly, moving slowly. Sweat and rain dripped into his eyes, blurring his vision, but he persisted. Inch by inch, he coaxed the calf toward solid ground. The father's presence behind him was silent encouragement, but the tension was unbearable. Finally, the calf was safe, trembling but unharmed. The boy fell to his knees, chest heaving, rain soaking his hair and clothes. Relief washed over him, but it was short-lived. Another calf, drawn by the commotion, began moving toward the same dangerous edge. The father acted swiftly this time, running through the mud, grabbing the calf by its scruff and pulling it to safety. The boy watched, heart pounding. He realized for the first time the full weight of the father's decisions. In that moment he understood that the man's sternness, his insistence on strength and calm, wasn't cruelty. It was preparation for moments like this. But the day was far from over. The storm intensified, rain lashing against their faces, wind whipping around them. The fence still needed repair, and the river continued to rise, threatening to flood the pasture completely. The boy's muscles ached, his fingers numb from cold and wet. Yet he kept going, hammering nails and steadying posts, guided by the father's sharp commands. Then came the moment that would be remembered forever. A massive branch, loosened by the wind, broke off from an old tree and crashed toward the riverbank. One of the calves was dangerously close to where it would fall. Without thinking, the father shouted a warning, but the boy's eyes were fixed on the calf. In a split second, the father made a decision that seemed impossible. He ran toward the branch, pushing it away from the calf, even as it threatened to crush him. Bike. The boy froze, terror gripping him.
He had never seen his father risk himself so openly, and for a moment he thought he had lost him.
But the father's strength and quick thinking saved both the calf and himself. The branch fell harmlessly to the side, and the storm's fury seemed to pause in recognition of what had just happened. The boy ran to his father, overwhelmed with a mix of fear, relief, and awe. You saved it," he stammered. The father, breathing hard, looked at him with eyes that held both pride and seriousness. Beck.
I did what had to be done. Always remember, sometimes doing the right thing isn't easy and it isn't safe.
But it's necessary. The boy nodded, trembling, absorbing the lesson in a way he had never understood before. He realized that every challenge, every test his father had given him, had been preparation for moments like this. Moments when courage, quick thinking, and calm under pressure could make the difference between life and disaster. The storm began to subside slowly, leaving the ranch wet but intact. The fence was finally repaired, the herd safe, and the boy exhausted beyond measure. Yet in that exhaustion he felt something new, respect for his father that ran deeper than fear, understanding that grew from experience rather than words. They walked back to the farmhouse in silence, the weight of the day pressing on them both. The boy could feel the ache in his muscles, the numbness in his fingers, and the lingering adrenaline from the crisis. The father's steps were steady, purposeful, a reminder of the strength required to face life head-on. Inside the farmhouse, they changed into dry clothes, the warmth of a stove offering comfort. The boy sat quietly, thinking about everything that had happened. The father watched him carefully, seeing the change in his expression, the new understanding that had been forged through danger and responsibility. That night, as the boy lay in bed, he replayed the day in his mind. He thought about the river, the branch, the calves, and the moments when fear had threatened to take over. But he also thought about his father, who had acted decisively, who had made choices that were difficult and frightening, but ultimately right. For the first time, the boy understood the depth of his father's lessons. Life on the ranch was not just about chores or strength.
It was about making hard decisions under pressure, protecting what mattered, and learning to face danger without panic. The unthinkable moment, the father putting himself at risk to save the calf, was a lesson the boy would carry forever.
He drifted to sleep, exhausted but transformed. He felt stronger, wiser, and more aware of what it meant to be responsible, to act courageously, and to respect the weight of the choices adults sometimes had to make. Outside, the rain had stopped, leaving the earth smelling fresh and alive, as if the land itself acknowledged the trials they had faced and the courage they had shown. The father, standing in the doorway for a moment, watched his son sleeping. He saw the change, subtle but undeniable, the growth that only comes through experience, through fear faced and challenges overcome. He did not speak, for words were unnecessary. Spectace. Sometimes the hardest lessons were taught not by talking but by acting, by demonstrating what it meant to be strong, careful, and brave. The morning after the storm was calm and quiet. The sun rose slowly over the damp fields, casting a soft golden light across the ranch. Everything smelled fresh, the earth, the grass, and the air itself seemed renewed. The boy woke with a sense of clarity he had never felt before. His body still ached from yesterday's work, and his hands bore the marks of hammering and hauling in the mud. But his mind felt sharper. his thoughts more focused. He understood now what it meant to face challenges, to make decisions under pressure, and to survive when fear threatened to take control. The father was already outside inspecting the fences again, though this time there was no urgency in his movements. Breath. The storm had passed, the river had receded, and the herd was calm. Yet the father's gaze lingered on the boy as he stepped into the yard. There was something different in that gaze, something the boy had never fully seen before. Pride, yes, but also respect. Respect for the way the boy had faced danger, had remained calm, and had learned from experience. "You did well yesterday," the father said, finally breaking the silence. His voice was quiet, almost gentle. "More than well. You handled things most adults would struggle with." The boy blinked in surprise. Praise from his father was rare, measured, and often hard to read, but hearing it now felt like a weight lifting from his chest. "Thank you, Dad," he said, his voice still soft but steady. Breath. I tried to remember what you taught me." The father nodded, a small but meaningful gesture.
It's not about trying.
"It's about acting when it matters. And yesterday, you acted well, Bay."
The boy felt a warmth spreading through him. It wasn't just about approval anymore. It was about understanding.
He realized that the father's strictness, the pushing, and the high expectations were never meant to harm him. They were preparation. Bay. They were lessons in courage, patience, and responsibility. Lessons that life on the ranch demanded every single day. They spent the morning checking the fences and moving the herd to safer pastures. The work was routine, but there was a different rhythm to it now. The boy moved with confidence, guided by the memory of yesterday's crisis. He knew how to anticipate the herd's movements, how to adjust his pace, and how to make decisions without hesitation. The father watched, sometimes quietly offering advice, sometimes letting the boy take the lead entirely. By midday, they took a break under the same large oak tree where they had rested before. The wind was gentle, rustling the leaves, and the boy looked out over the fields with a sense of pride and accomplishment. "I think I'm starting to understand," he said quietly. "Understand what?" the father asked, leaning back against the tree, arms crossed. "Why you push me, why you make things hard," the boy said. "It's not just about work. It's about being ready for anything. About knowing what to do when something goes wrong." Respect. The father's expression softened, and for the first time he smiled. Not a big smile, just a small, almost shy one. "Exactly," he said. "The world doesn't give warnings. It doesn't pause. Bet.
You have to be ready to act, even when you're scared, even when it's hard. Yesterday you learned that in the hardest way possible.
Today you'll learn it in a quieter way, but it's just as important." The boy felt a sense of peace he had never known before. Birth. The fear and tension of the past days were still there, but they were accompanied now by understanding, courage, and respect. He had faced danger, made decisions, and survived. He had learned what it meant to trust himself, and in that trust he found a new connection to his father. As they worked, the father told stories about the ranch, about his own father, about storms that had come and gone, and about challenges that had tested him when he was young. The boy listened intently, realizing that every story carried a lesson, every experience shaping the man his father had become. And now he was part of that story, part of the tradition, the rhythm, and the responsibilities of the ranch. By late afternoon, the sun began to dip, casting long shadows across the fields. The boy and his father sat on the fence, watching the herd graze peacefully. The boy's hands were blistered and his body sore, but he felt stronger than ever. Stronger in body, yes, but stronger in mind and spirit, too.
He had learned resilience, courage, and the importance of acting when it mattered most. Do you ever think about leaving this place? The boy asked suddenly, breaking the quiet.
The father looked at him, eyebrows slightly raised. Leaving?
Yes, the boy said.
To see the world, maybe do something different. I love it here, but breaths.
I wonder what else is out there. The father was quiet for a moment, considering.
Then he spoke carefully. I understand that. The world is big, and there are many paths. But wherever you go, remember what you've learned here. Responsibility, courage, patience. These things will carry you anywhere. The ranch will always be here, but the lessons are yours to take. The boy nodded. He felt a strange mixture of sadness and hope. Sadness because the ranch was more than just land. It was family, history, and memory. Oh, hope because he realized that the lessons he had learned were not confined to the fields or the animals. They were part of him now, ready to guide him wherever life took him. As evening approached, they walked back to the farmhouse together. The sky was painted in soft shades of orange and pink, the last light glinting off the wet grass. The boy felt a deep sense of gratitude for the day, for the challenges, and for his father, Bus. He understood that the man's actions, the strictness, the pushing, the unthinkable choices in moments of danger, were all part of a larger purpose, shaping him into someone capable, responsible, and strong. That night, after a simple dinner, the boy sat by the window, looking out at the stars above the ranch. The air was cool, and the night was quiet except for the soft sounds of animals settling for the evening. He thought about everything he had learned, the long hours of work, the fear he had faced, the decisions he had made, and the moments when his father had acted in ways he didn't fully understand at first. He realized that life was not about avoiding danger or seeking comfort. It was about facing challenges, making choices, and learning from them. It was about courage, responsibility, and understanding the weight of decisions. And most importantly, it was about the people who guided you, sometimes harshly, sometimes silently, but always with care. The father appeared at the door, watching him quietly, begged.
Thinking about the day? He asked.
The boy nodded. And about everything you've taught me. The father's expression was unreadable, but there was a glint of pride in his eyes. Good, Beck. Remember, the lessons don't end. Life will keep testing you, but you're ready for more than you think. The boy smiled, feeling a connection to his father stronger than ever before. He understood now that the unthinkable choices, the hard lessons, and the quiet guidance were all part of love. A love that demanded strength, courage, and understanding. As he lay down to sleep, the boy felt a sense of peace. The ranch was safe, the herd was secure, and the storm had passed. He had survived, grown, and learned what it meant to face fear and responsibility. And in that growth he found not only strength, but also a deep respect for the father who had shaped him, who had acted when necessary, and who had always guided him toward becoming the person he was meant to be. Outside, the wind whispered through the trees, carrying with it the quiet strength of the land, the rhythm of the ranch, and the lessons of generations. The boy closed his eyes, ready to face whatever challenges awaited, confident that he had learned what it truly meant to live, to act, and to carry forward the legacy of those who came before him. And in the quiet of the night, father and son rested, connected by experience, courage, and understanding. A bond forged not just by blood, but by shared struggle, hard lessons, and love that demanded strength. The ranch would continue, Storms would come and go, and life would present new challenges. But the boy now knew that he had the courage, skill, and heart to face them. He had learned from the past, lived through the present, and was ready to step into the future, stronger, wiser, and forever shaped by the man who had taught him what it truly meant to survive and thrive.